Here's your midday brief for Monday, November 16th. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal. Drug maker Moderna says early trial results show its experimental coronavirus vaccine was 94.5% effective at protecting people from COVID-19. The vaccine also showed signs of being safe. The researchers and regulators are waiting for more complete safety data from the study. Moderna plans to ask federal health authorities to clear the vaccine by early December. That would make it one of the first to be distributed in the U.S. Earlier this month, Pfizer and BioNTech said their COVID-19 vaccine was more than 90% effective. News of Moderna's vaccine sent U.S. stocks sharply higher. By midday, the Dow Jones Industrials were up more than 400 points, or 1.5%, hitting their highest intraday level on record. The S&P 500 was up roughly 1%, and the Nasdaq was up about 0.6%. And Hurricane Iota strengthened to a Category 5 storm this morning, with maximum sustained winds near 160 miles an hour. Forecasters expect it to remain at that category before making landfall tonight in northeastern Nicaragua. Iota is the second major storm in 2 weeks to threaten Central America, which is still reeling from the devastation left by Hurricane Eta. We'll have a lot more coverage of the day's news.
A new vaccine that protects against the coronavirus is almost 95% effective, according to early data from the US company Moderna. The World Health Organization has welcomed the announcement, but has warned against complacency. As COVID cases top 11 million in the US, aides to Joe Biden say the White House is still excluding the president-elect's team from planning around a vaccination campaign. Negotiations are taking place in Brussels to get a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU. The sticking points continue to be fishing rights, how any deal will be governed, and measures to prevent unfair competition. And the head of the International Olympic Committee says he's confident the postponed Tokyo Games will go ahead in front of spectators next year. Thomas Bach says the Games could be the light at the end of the tunnel.
We begin here in Tokyo, where the head of the International Olympic Committee says organizers are on track to deliver a safe Summer Games next year. The coronavirus pandemic forced the postponement of Tokyo 2020, but Thomas Bach says a lot has changed, and by next summer, there'll be even more tools to protect athletes and spectators.
And if then a vaccine should be available, then the IOC would take these costs and would collaborate there with the national Olympic committees.
Bach says the IOC would make every effort to have participants vaccinated, even as countries prioritize people who are most vulnerable. But Bach says recent competitions, including an international gymnastics meet in Japan, show large-scale events can be held safely even without a vaccine. Earlier in the day, Bach met Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide. They agreed on the symbolic power of the Games.
We can and will make this Olympic Games as a great symbol of solidarity and unity of humanity in this world, which then will hopefully be a post-coronavirus world.
We are determined to host the Games as proof that humankind has defeated the coronavirus pandemic. We also want to show the world that regions affected by the Great East Japan earthquake have recovered.
The IOC president says organizers aim to have spectators, but will need to decide how many can be accommodated. The Summer Games are scheduled to start on July 23rd, followed by the Paralympics in August. Japanese officials are on high alert over a rise in group infections. The health ministry reported 130 coronavirus clusters last week, up from 20 the week before. The biggest source of these infections was restaurants and other eating establishments. Next was group facilities, including elderly care homes. The nation broke a record for daily cases last week, and numbers remain stubbornly high. To control the outbreak, the ministry is sending teams of anti-cluster experts to areas seeing a sharp rise. Sapporo in northern Japan is one of those cities. It reported 189 new cases on Monday. One of the experts says a local health center is now operating well beyond capacity.
As much as possible, we want to ensure that fewer people become seriously ill or die. Also, it is important that everyone takes care to protect themselves from the virus.
He also says officials have put priority on responding to cluster infections in places that care for the elderly or people with pre-existing health conditions. The city's mayor and prefectural governor met Monday to assess the situation.
Infections will spread to all over the prefecture unless we strengthen prevention measures.
They're asking people to refrain from any non-essential outings within Sapporo and not to travel between Sapporo and the rest of Hokkaido. Now, numbers are also climbing around Tokyo as the level of daytime activity in some urban areas is almost back to normal. NHK analyzed locational data collected by an IT firm and estimated foot traffic. The results show the numbers of people at transit hubs in Yokohama and Chiba are nearing levels recorded before the pandemic began. More than 120,000 coronavirus cases have been reported across Japan. Over 1,900 people have died. Next, the successful launch of the Crew Dragon spacecraft on Sunday is heralding a new era for the commercial space industry. It's designed for comfort, and there are plans to fly paying passengers. The crew wore spacesuits conceived by a Hollywood costume designer. Japanese astronaut Noguchi Soichi is on his third space mission. The Crew Dragon is now making a 27-hour journey to the International Space Station, which is orbiting Earth at an altitude of about 400 kilometers.
The big milestone here is that we are now moving away from development and test and into operational flights. This is truly a commercial launch vehicle.
The Crew Dragon was developed by U.S. aerospace firm SpaceX.
That is how a 21st century spaceship should land.
The company plans to carry paying passengers aboard the spacecraft. The capsule boasts a sleek interior to appeal to space trekkers. Older space capsules were equipped with masses of switches operated by professionally trained astronauts. But the Crew Dragon is outfitted with touchscreen controls and is fully automated. And liftoff is another appealing feature. Previously, the operating panel was never shown to the public during blastoff, but SpaceX showed the inside of the capsule. U.S. aircraft maker Boeing is also developing manned spacecraft. It's hoped that competition will cut costs and promote the utilization of space. Now to Belarus, where more than 1,200 anti-government protesters have been detained across the nation during rallies calling for President Alexander Lukashenko to step down. The demonstrators claimed the presidential election in August was rigged. The protests have been going on intermittently for more than 3 months. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets Sunday in the capital, Minsk. Government authorities used tear gas and stun grenades to disperse them. A local human rights group says protesters have been detained in more than 10 cities across the country. Last Thursday, a man died at a hospital in Minsk after being severely beaten and detained by security forces the previous day. The unrest has intensified the already tense situation between anti-government protesters and the Lukashenko administration. Authorities in India are taking countermeasures after coronavirus infections surged in New Delhi. Over 1,000 people died in the capital this month amid the Diwali festival. Health officials announced the measures during an emergency meeting on Sunday. The central government will increase the number of ICU beds in New Delhi and deploy doctors and paramedics from other regions to deal with a manpower shortage. Officials have also instructed local authorities to conduct home-to-home surveys and double daily testing to 125,000 people. India has more than 8.8 million coronavirus cases. That's the second highest tally in the world after the United States. Daily infections nationwide have been decreasing, but there are fears of another spike in the coming winter. A North Korean state-run media outlet says the country's leader Kim Jong-un instructed senior officials to further strengthen anti-coronavirus measures. Korean Central Television reported Kim attended a Politburo meeting of the Workers' Party on Sunday. North Korea claims there have been no confirmed coronavirus infections in the country, but participants discussed the need to step up anti-virus measures as the pandemic has worsened in some other nations. Kim reportedly instructed those at the Politburo meeting to remain vigilant and make the country's preventive measures as strong as iron. North Korean media outlets have made no mention of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden since he declared victory. President Donald Trump has favorable relations with Kim, so North Korea is likely paying close attention to Biden's stance toward the country. Authorities in the Philippines have recommended that a state of calamity be declared across Luzon Island after a powerful typhoon hit the country last week. Typhoon Vamco pounded Luzon on Wednesday and Thursday, triggering massive floods and mudslides in the capital Manila and surrounding areas. The death toll has risen to 67, with 13 people missing. Tens of thousands of homes are inundated. The Disaster Management Agency urged President Rodrigo Duterte to declare a state of calamity in response to the damage caused by Vamco and other recent typhoons. On Sunday, Vamco hit Vietnam, which suffered extensive damage from rain-triggered floods and mudslides last month. Authorities ordered about 460,000 people in the country's central region to evacuate. Vietnamese national TV reported the nation has shut down airports and suspended train services. Next to Peru, where President Manuel Merino has resigned after 5 days in office. The former head of Congress was sworn into office only 1 day after his predecessor was ousted. Martin Vizcarra faced allegations of corruption. Massive protests followed, with members of the public citing a lack of transparency in Vizcarra's impeachment. 2 protesters died during clashes with police. Merino on Sunday said he would step down in response to the deaths. Congress appears set to appoint a new president. Peru has been in turmoil for years. Since the 2016 presidential election, there have been 3 presidents, but none have finished their term. A presidential election is scheduled for next April. Keiko Fujimori, the eldest daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori, is expected to run.